welcome to AboutFACE Theatre presents 5 Questions With, and today's guest, Mina Morita. Mina is the Artistic Director of Crowded Fire Theatre in San Francisco. A celebrated director of new plays, she has worked at theatres such as Berkeley Rep, the Magic Theater, and American Conservatory Theater, working with creators like Anna Deavere Smith, Christopher Chen, Gunderson, and Young Jean Lee, among others. Her accolades include a Theatre Bay Area Award for Outstanding Direction of a Musical in 2014, a Shellie Award for Direction in 2018, being awarded the 40 at 40 distinction for her impact on Bay Area theatre, and being named one of the YBCA 100 for asking questions and making provocations that shape the future of culture. Mina, you're very welcome.
Thank you for having me. It's wonderful to be here.
Yeah, it's so great to see you. I love that provocations. I love that word.
We love interrogation and provocation at Crowded Fire for sure.
Good. Well, Mina, to start off, we're just going to ask you like what play or experience first got you into theater?
I think like so many others, it was just about building community inside of a school at first, you know, at a young age. And I think for me, I come actually from a family that includes a number of artists. And so it was always going to be some sort of visual expression. And I found that one direction could have been illustration. On the other hand, theater was something that I was able to do with many other people. And that brought me out of myself to expand upon the idea of how we are humans in this world and how we engage with each other. And so, you know, junior high on, it was part of my genetics. It was part of what I had to do. I tried to make several changes that were not in the theater, and I was always led back ultimately.
We can relate.
Yeah, I bet. I mean, so many of us, it's like, we're still here. We're still going, you know? So yes.
I often tell people that theater often feels to me like an addiction. You know what I mean? I think maybe a healthy one, but I still think it's an addiction.
It's true.
Okay, so Mina, so just moving on then to talk to you about plays. So what's a great play that you love and why? And a great play could mean whatever that means to you. It could be a really famous play, or maybe a play we've never heard of.
I would definitely say that I am a hardcore Young Jean Lee fan, and ever since first being introduced to The Shipment, actually by Les Waters, I think, at Berkeley Rep, and reading that play and then living with it for years until I got to direct it. That is hands down one of my favorite expressions of theater that I've ever been able to engage in. And I think, you know, a lot of people would argue that it's a very experimental play and that it doesn't have a linear yada, yada, yada. But I think for me, it is a way to shake up an audience through friction, through discomfort. And I think what's special about being under the same roof together is to understand what somebody next to you is uncomfortable with, laughs at, sort of the understanding of our own expectations of what a norm might be, and then try to expand upon what our experiences in thinking of a narrative, of an art form, how we consume the arts, how we consume cultural constructs as opposed to push against them or figure out what is visceral also about the theater, because that takes us through a number of modern day minstrel forms, whether it be comedy, stand-up comedy, or dance, in terms of consumption of Black culture and the Black body. And then, you know, thinking about video games, certain narratives, and all of that. And then conversely, like, what is a white specific narrative that we've assumed is the baseline, that is the norm. So that is a piece that was profound to work on with our cast and crew, and continues to affect me to this day. Yeah.
Well, I'm intrigued now.
Yeah.
Definitely check it out. It's online too. You should check it out. Yeah, if you check out Young Jean Lee, The Shipment, it's available.
Fantastic. Great.
Mhm.
Good. So, Mina, can you tell us about a time in your theater life where things turned out differently than you expected them to?
Like this whole last year. I mean, I don't, yeah, everybody's, I don't know. I think, one example I'll give with a production is called Banished Darkness that we did here in San Francisco. It was working with an orchestra of 12 classical musicians to do hip hop opera, mixed in with disability justice dance company Access Dance here, and Crowded Fire, which is theater. And we created a participatory piece where Starfinch was the playwright, and we melded all of these different expressions together just to share the life of a young Black woman who's feeling the ground underneath her in a way that was like, is this real? Is this quicksand? What is something that I can hold on to? And she goes through the politics that I think we are especially facing in the United States into an expression of spending time with others, and finally lands in the middle of the entire audience. And all of us were in concentric circles while this resounding, beautiful orchestration was playing. And the dancers and actors were all helping us move together. And then the sunrise appears, and that is the one thing that we can hold on to together. It was meant to be a piece that allowed all of us who come from very different, also cultural constructs and privilege, levels of privilege, to be together in a room where we normally wouldn't be. And right in the middle of trying to produce, we had the California wildfires, which now at this point are happening yearly. And it was, I don't know, I just had been reading Octavia Butler's piece right before this and thinking of sort of where we're headed as global society. And the air was so thick with smoke, and we weren't sure we were going to be able to be together. And so we were checking air quality index every day. People were wearing masks for a different reason, right? To come into San Francisco and be able to participate. We still had about 150 people show up for the performances each night. And it was amazing because the last moment in the piece was about taking a breath together and witnessing the sunrise. And to just think about the fact that that's something that we had taken for granted, to be able to take a breath together with others inside the same building, inside the same experience. And there was an option for us to sort of be in very close proximity with each other. Was really profound. And I think for a lot of people, it was a moment of deep grief and also joy that we were together. And I had no idea that mindset or that appreciation or that closeness with the conversation of mortality was going to continue into this last year, into now. I feel like, now the things that we thought were always going to be there, we know are not necessarily. And to be able to, I don't know, there's a number of different pieces that I feel like I've worked on, and then something comes true about it. And so, I think for good or for bad, artists are also truth tellers, and there's a sort of a prophesying that can happen because we're reading patterns of human behavior and patterns of society in some ways, and where in terms of where they're leading. So yeah, so that's a piece that really comes to mind as I don't know, it was profound.
Yeah, just the hairs are standing up on my arms, just thinking about that collective breath, and how that would be even now. I mean, just wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so Mina, we talked a little bit earlier about, wanting to get away from theater, but getting dragged back in. Um, so, so what keeps you coming back to the theater? What moves you? What excites you about theater?
I think this last year, I was just talking to Isaac Gomez, who's a playwright I'm working with right now. And there was a real, also a grieving process and a coming to terms with what was going to happen with our field, where artists were being held within institution, within, within the idea of value in a larger cultural framework. And I think a number of people chose to leave the theater. I think it was very hard for artists, especially who are in the United States in particular, I think, being left behind while everyone is holding on to their buildings and structures. And for a number of us to understand that there was just less agency than we had thought, even though an institution is supposed to be built around the artists, because it's the art that people come to participate in and be a part of. And so for me, and for many of us, it was also a moment of decision, I think, whether we to stay engaged and whether to turn back. And in doing that, sort of the clouds or the distractions of our harried lives, because often we're jumping from project to project to project for little to no money, and not having enough time to really seep into the work. And creative work shouldn't be on a schedule in many ways. The best work comes from being able to live with our collaborators and think about what we're making. So this time was, for me, both a moment of stripping things away, and then it's been like the waves. It's like a return to, and to be in rehearsal on August 3rd, 2021, and be in a room with all of the other artists was also profound. It was really like a return to the self, a re-remembering of who we are, of why making things with other people in the face of what is often an unmaking and what feels like a spooling out, destruction of what we're facing in our societies. It was an act of grace. It was an act of making, which for a piece like the one we were working on, I didn't necessarily expect to feel as deeply, but it was a re-remembering of, yes, this is why I was doing what I was doing. And to have been able to open our production on Friday of last week and have an audience be there and, squealing and screaming and laughing and reflecting was incredible. And, while everyone's sitting at home watching their streaming content, listening to music, it was, again, like, we come from somewhere. People believed in us at some point on our journey and invested their time and resources and their wisdom into what we were creating together. And so to understand that it's not just someone's found and they're suddenly like famous or whatever, it's like we work our asses off for years, a lifetime. It's a craft. Like someone doesn't pick up a violin and suddenly know how to play. And so that's what it felt like. That's what it was. So it is that feeling of making with other people that brings me back. And yes, we may not be changing the world overnight as theater artists, but we are changing each other every time we engage with each other in a circle that is often larger than most people get to interface with, you know, and talk about things that are way deeper and much more spiritual than many others get to do, or some people try to escape from having to do, you know. So
yeah. Oh,
Great.
beautiful. I love that. I love talking about it. I love doing it too. That part. So in your theater life, and you've, as you talked about the craft and building the craft, are there any skills that you feel like that you've learned or that you've built in your theater life that you found useful in your non-theater life and your, the rest of the hours of the day?
Yeah. So many. How we are together. I mean, it was, oh gosh, man, when this like apocalyptic moment fell upon us like last year, there was this whole conversation about like who's going to survive. It's not just the people who know how to build stuff or yes, seed, plant, feed self-sustaining ways of like living, but also I think we talked a lot about how to facilitate conversations, how to build community in a really intentional, strong way, where trust is built. I think we're seeing in our daily politics the fact that poor leadership can build distrust, and that actually can lead to the death of hundreds of thousands of people. And on a very basic level, I think theater artists know how to, when trained and putting value at a human value at the center, or value of humanity at the center of our work, how we can actually care for each other and build a strong team. Build a strong community. And I know for a fact that is something that I have learned by making and remaking and, making mistakes and owning up to them and learning and continuing to grow as a human. And I think that's the other thing that happens often, or one hopes as an artist, you never stop learning. And that sense of wonder, that sense of savoring is not something everybody has access to. And that's something we actually look for.
That's great. That's great. Yeah. Well, this has been so terrific, Mina. Thank you so much. As a bonus question, can you tell us anything about what you're working on at the moment?
Oh, I'd be happy to do that. So Crowded Fire is currently producing and just opened, as you heard me say, The Displaced is the name of the show, written by Isaac Gomez, who is also writing for a number of different films and TV shows. Narcos is one of them on Netflix. This particular piece is a gentrification horror tale. So there's not a lot of horror in theater because it's very hard to do well. And so we were like very ambitious in coming back and decided that to be able to do something that included sort of the sex, the horror and rock and roll of our of our time, and have it be very visceral, a visceral return to the theater has been fabulous. So everything from blood to levitation to magic tricks is included. And yeah, people have been screaming in the theater, which just makes me so happy. Yeah. Nothing like coming back from a pandemic with a horror play, I tell you.
People probably need a good scream, a good laugh and a good scream,
Right, yeah. The two things we need to let out.
Very cathartic. We've been, I think for a lot of people, they're like, oh, it was just perfect because I came in and I was, like it's a huge step to come back and be inside with everyone. So like that sense of tension is released. I was watching a horror play.
That's great.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, Mina, thank you so much. It has been such a joy. Such a joy.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It was wonderful to speak to you both, and I can't wait to check out all of the other conversations that are happening. What an incredible time and moment to just take account and hear from so many wonderful artists. So thank you for doing this.
Yeah. Oh, our pleasure. Our pleasure. Thank you. And thank you, of course, to you, the audience, for joining us. If you liked the interview, please like below and follow AboutFACE and share, because we believe theater makes life better. See you next time on AboutFACE Theater presents 5 Questions With.
If you've enjoyed this video, please subscribe to us on YouTube, like us on Facebook, and share. Thanks for watching.